Hello, welcome to A Friend Reacts, where I talk about one of the current topics in video games. And I'd like to kind of give my opinion on a very game-specific issue that's sprung up, which is another example of just how easy it is for Sonic Team to utterly drop the ball and divide their fan base right down the middle. I mean, this is an old hat for the Sonic community. They've always been divided right down the middle, but the DLC for Sonic Frontiers has done it in a way that I never could have predicted coming, and I think it's really fascinating. I released a video only 2 or 3 weeks ago praising really the hardcore dedication of Sonic players who master this gameplay style, master these controls. They put the hours and they see value in putting the hours and the dedication and the hard work in to become absolute pros at speedrunning through any one of the games in the franchise and getting the most possible enjoyment from the mastery of the skill of the controls of the frenetic, high speed, high stakes action gameplay. I approve of that, but it's always been also a problem with the Sonic franchise in that because it moves so quickly, the base skill level is often too high, or in the reverse, when Sega really fumbles the ball, too low. Because Sonic moves so quickly, if you don't know what you're doing, a novice gamer can pick up the controls and just struggle. They can't walk around, they can't, they just run off the edges, they just careen into spike traps or fall over and die, and they don't really understand what it is they're doing wrong because the game doesn't teach them well enough and doesn't help them, give them the time to adjust. Other video game series find this much easier. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a good thing to have a game to have a very low skill to entry level. And up until this new downloadable content, I would have said Sonic Frontiers had an extremely low to enter skill level. It was quite forgiving. It had challenge, there was plenty of challenge in Sonic Frontiers, but you could brute force your way through it right the way to the end of the game with absolutely no problem. You could set the difficulty at any time and you could unlock a special side, I'm not going to call it a final boss, it was a very weird shoot 'em up which didn't fit the majority of the gameplay, but there was a secret enemy side game cutscene at the end of the game only if you played on hard mode. Wasn't there if you played on normal or easy. And so I played through the game on hard mode. I saw that final boss and I brute forced my way through the game. I got good enough at the combat to make my way there and see that, and I leveled up the characters enough that you could just force your way through to the ending. And I think that's great game design. You can brute force your way through, you can get good enough to manage, but there's a ranking system and the really good players can do it quicker, they can do it more efficiently, they can do it using less rings, they can get higher ranks, S ranks, and they're rewarded, there are unlockables for doing this. It was a divisive game, it definitely wasn't perfect, it had its flaws, but I really liked Sonic Frontiers when it came out last year. I thought this was an exciting step forward for the series. And I didn't really keep up with the unlockable DLC. There was Update 1, Update 2, and then finally we were promised Update 3 would have new story cutscenes, a new final boss, and you could play through the game with additional characters. Tails, Knuckles and Amy would be playable, because the original game only played as Sonic, and for hardcore Sonic fans, people who know the franchise, playing as these other side characters has always been a fun and exciting experience. I was really looking forward to it, so I didn't really engage properly with Update 1 or Update 2. I held out for Update 3 because this is what I wanted. Chance to glide around as Knuckles and explore the islands, able to climb up certain walls. And that's what we got by the letter of the law. You can play as Knuckles, Tails and Amy. There is new story content. By the legal interpretation of what was promised, we've got it. But morally, I feel like it's just been a massive kick in the teeth, because someone needs to talk to Sega about difficulty balancing, because they've gone in the exact opposite direction. The base skill level required to complete this DLC is ridiculously high, far higher than anything in the base game, and some of the fans are absolutely adoring this. I've seen so much love of people who said that they found the challenge, the frenetic, and the final boss of this DLC absolutely fantastic. They feel like this is the challenge and the reward, and the ego, the angst, the mania to get there, the skill level it demands of you, the tension, and then the relief, the reward for getting through it. They're like, this is top tier gaming content. But I've also seen a lot of people just rage quit. Just say this is unacceptable. It's additional story content and the demands it puts upon you just to proceed is ridiculous. And this is not like, I don't even think this is comparable to game series like Dark Souls. You can't just say get good, because the thing about Dark Souls and video game series like that, and good entries in this series, is yes, you can have challenge, yes, you can have difficulty, you can make demands of the player, but you need to train them up. You need to set a scenario where the player is rewarded for learning good behaviours and getting better. And the entire way through Sonic Frontiers, the base game, it made none of the demands upon you that this DLC requires. The DLC does a awful job of explaining to you what its demands are, and it changes some things that no one saw coming, no one could have predicted. Apart from that final boss, there's almost no difference between easy, normal and hard mode in the base game, except for the HP of enemies and the amount of damage you do. In this DLC, easy mode gives you additional springs and traversal options which don't exist in the higher difficulties, meaning that people who have played through the entire game and said, well, you might as well be on hard because I can brute force my way through. No. Easy, I fully recommend, if you've not tried the DLC, put it on easy mode. If you're struggling with this game, change it to easy, because in the base game, easy, normal and hard made no difference. In the DLC, it absolutely does, and there's nothing that tells you that. Similarly, I've just had a rage-inducing moment where there's a trial that to proceed to carry on you had to defeat a certain number of enemies in a very strict time limit. And I've got the footage here of me trying and failing, and it's just not fun. The combat of Sonic Frontiers is just not rewarding enough for this to be fun. You can cheese it, and if you die enough times, the game will say, oh, would you like us to lower the challenge? Yes, please, definitely, and it suddenly becomes achievable. I didn't know it lowered the challenge. I played this challenge mode 3 or 4 times and died every time, or ran out of time more likely. So I turned the console off and I came back an hour later, and it's at the top of an enormous tower that you've got to climb. Enjoyable, it's actually this bit I like of the game, the platforming. I made my way up there. I tried another 5 times, turned the console off, couldn't do it. Made my way up there again, tried another 5 times, and it was only after someone assured me if you die enough times it will lower the difficulty that I wasted 20 minutes just letting myself fail the challenge again and again and again before finally, would you like us to lower the difficulty? It hadn't recorded any of my attempts. If I'd just kept dying a few more times, this challenge would have suddenly been feasible, it would have suddenly been possible, and there's nothing in the game to tell you that it's going to do this. So apologies for this reaction video, is a little rant, and it's not the first time this game is just a stupid design decision that lets everything else around it down. I adore so much in this DLC. The music is fantastic. Controlling Knuckles and Amy and Tails was mostly fun, although why did they nerf Knuckles Glide with the awful momentum reducing back pull before he starts moving forwards? I don't get it. There's lots to admire here, but someone needs to sit down with Sonic Team and just explain to them how badly they are screwing up and what the definition of a difficulty ramp is in a video game, because all the evidence of the last 20 years of this franchise is that someone in Sega just doesn't get it. This is fundamental for video gaming. If you want to know more about how badly this is screwed up, I really recommend you go and check out Webster's video. He's ultimately just rage quit, having not got even half as far through this DLC as I have. And there are other people. There's a lot of anger out there, but there's also a lot of people who absolutely adore this, who think it's the best Sonic has ever been. Top tier moment for the franchise. Can both sides be right? Probably. Why can't Sega bridge this gap? Is this franchise forever cursed? Anyway, rant over. Thank you for putting up with my griping. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to A Friend Remembers, where we'll have plenty of discussion about video games, books, movies, TV programs, Sonic the Hedgehog, Tomb Raider, Final Fantasy. This year's the year of the JRPG. This weekend, I will be commencing my Final Fantasy marathon. Video retrospectives of my playthrough for every mainline game in the Final Fantasy series from start to finish. Please, I hope you stick around and check in for more.